begin with the American intelligence media and decoding the Trump tweets. But before we get started, if you have not heard the discussion that Michael McKibben and Douglas Gabriel had, and I will make sure that that is featured in the link. Just go to the description box and click that on. But this audio actually is so amazing, shows where the heart of the beast is. Thomas, congratulations to both you and Michael McKibben for this amazing intelligence drop.
Well, thank you, Betsy. It is the results of the work of just an amazing amount of people, a number of teams that have been working nonstop for, 6 months, and finally we reach, hopefully, the bottom, and we can now, within probably the next week or so, name exactly who it is that owns the internet and is ripping everybody off with their highway robbery, a tax that happens with every single interchange in the internet.
Well, it is amazing because you need to know how the enemy operates, what its communications and operational structure is. And I think you guys, I know you guys have nailed it. Now, we leave this audio for you to listen to. Your job as listeners and patriots is to make sure to get this out to as many people as you can. In the internet, information will always get where it needs to go. If it's relevant and you keep pushing it through your social network, it will go exactly where it needs to go. So let's start today. We wanted to start on a tweet of September 7th because it was so loaded and we didn't have an opportunity to discuss it the other day. Thomas, Trump tweeted, 14 days for $28 million. That's $2 million a day. No collusion. A great day for America.
It's a great day for America to watch this comedy of errors called the Robert Mueller Special Counsel investigation, which was all predicated upon John Brennan's Crossfire Hurricane operation, counterintelligence, black ops operation, which has turned into the Mueller investigation. So basically, this is the October surprise. The October surprise was last week, which they sprung too early. This is the result that should come in like the end of November. But they're blowing it everywhere, and because they're so anxious to try to take Trump down because they know that nothing has happened that has even dented him. So what is happening? This is just hysterical. I'm afraid it's going to take me a few minutes to go over this one. The judge was being asked to give George Papadopoulos 6 months for lying to the special investigators. Now, this is what happened. He was started.
If you could get these pronouns and tell me who, because people get lost. And I know that there are folks out there that say, oh my gosh, I have no idea what Thomas is saying. I am so sorry for you that you haven't been keeping up with the narrative over the last 2 years, but we cannot slow down and we certainly cannot catch you up. We recommend that you just listen to some of our old videos, and that might help you ease up to the point where we are today. So, sorry to interrupt, but go ahead, Brian.
I guess I should back up a bit. The 14 days is, of course, for George Papadopoulos. It was the judgment of the sentencing that came along with Robert Mueller's indictment for lying, a plea bargain, lying to the grand jury or to the special investigators of the Robert Mueller fake special counsel investigation. So what this means is Trump is saying $28 million has been spent on this witch hunt so far. And all they're getting is 14 days? 14 days for a person for lying? And that person there's no collusion. There's no corruption. There was no Russian connection. And in a minute, I'm going to explain to you what really went down. So the joke, $2 million a day. So really, so far, the reason Trump says that is this is the only thing that they have done in this almost 2 years, $28 million that they have actually accomplished. The previous things, the previous indictments for Manafort at Gates and one other person that was involved with that mess, those were for crimes long, long before they came to the Trump campaign. And as we know, Larry and John Podesta committed the exact same crimes, but they're being given complete immunity. So then what do we have? Well, Carter Page was the big focus of the Russian dossier. Did Carter Page get indicted? No. Who did get indicted? 25 Russian names. And I say names because we don't even know if they're people. 25 Russians were indicted that we'll never even know exist. That's pretty powerful. And 3 Russian companies were indicted. One of them is here and says, and is fighting in court, saying that they didn't even exist in the year that Mueller said they existed, let alone that they had these Russians working in a hacking company that was working directly for Putin to meddle in the elections. All lies. So what does Mueller have? So far, nothing. So then he's got the Michael Flynn, basically plea agreement to plea down to lying to the special investigators. Now remember, George Papadopoulos and Michael Flynn were set up with conversations that they didn't know were being recorded, and then they were used against them months later when they were asked if they said this or that. And when they downplayed what they said, then they were charged with lying to the special counsel investigators. Who can remember what they said 6 months ago to the exact word? Here's what happened with Papadopoulos. He tried to first off, Crossfire Hurricane investigation started in July of 2016. They never interviewed George Papadopoulos until January, or I'm not exactly sure, no one knows, let's say early 2016. At that time, they probably recorded the interview. Later, when they arrested him in a big dramatic show as he came off the airplane coming back from Russia, where they set up the meeting for him to go to Russia, by the way, and they arrested him to make it look like he was the guilty Russian party coming back fresh loaded with money from Putin. No. Nobody in Russia really knows George Papadopoulos. That was a setup. We'll go to that in a minute. But what did they do then? They interviewed him again. He said some different things about Joseph Mifsud, who is a British-Russian spy. He's a Brit who has been spying in Russia. This is all very well known. We'll go into that in a minute. But basically, he was simply entrapped. That's called entrapment. But what was he entrapped about? Joseph Mifsud, Stefan Halper, Christopher Steele, and then our own FBI agent, Michael Gaeta in Rome, set up him and others, Alexander Downer and the other people involved in Cambridge intelligence seminars. All of these people worked hard to even give George Papadopoulos a big, big title, the International Energy and Resource Law and Security Institute. They invented that institute, gave him a title so that he would look important, so they could say that he was a Trump representative for international affairs with Russia, which he was not. As a matter of fact, he had nothing to do with the Trump campaign except his name was on a form once and he went to 2 meetings and he kept trying to get the attention of Jeff Sessions and everyone else, and they told him, go jump in the lake. We don't care what you're saying, because what you're saying shows that you're a naive fool. And I'll explain that in a minute. So, what did they really get? They got 14 days for a $28 million investigation. So far, no collusion. Well, Rod Rosenstein already said it. And any of these plea bargains have nothing to do with colluding with Russia or a conspiracy to collude with Russia, which is supposedly the crime of this investigation, which there is no such crime. And so far, they've said that Trump has no collusion, no corruption, no cooperation, no conspiracy, no obstruction, and that he's not even a target of the investigation. That is what Rod Rosenstein, who's in charge of it, has said. So what do they really have when it's all said and done? They got George Papadopoulos for 14 days.
And one person they don't have is Joseph Mifsud. What happened to Joseph Mifsud?
Oh my, this is complicated. When Stefan Halper lured George Papadopoulos and paid him to come to one of these Cambridge intelligence seminars, where he met Joseph Mifsud, who's part of a group called the Valdi Discussion Club, which is nothing more than an attempt to get Joseph Mifsud, he's from Malta, and he's a professor who teaches in Italy at a fake university, which I'll talk about in a minute. But basically, what they did is they pulled in George Papadopoulos, got him pictures of him speaking with who the Brits would say is a Russian spy, Joseph Mifsud. His Valdi Discussion Club guarantees that if you meet with the club, he's going to take you once a year to have a personal meeting with the Valdi Discussion Club members and Putin. And this is a fact. So this is a setup, of course. So they invited George Papadopoulos into that club. They gave him titles. They even had him meet Boris Johnson. And they treated him as if he was Trump's #1 international expert, especially on Russia and oil, because that was part of the setup. They also did the same with Carter Page at the same time. Without telling Carter Page, who had been a previous FBI asset, they inserted him into the Trump campaign as James Clapper admits on television, as an informant, not a spy. They like to use the word informant so that they could spy on Trump. But Carter Page didn't get in hardly at all. He didn't even come to a meeting. And George Papadopoulos got to come to 2 meetings where he made himself into a complete idiot, and they basically said, get out of here. But now, to this very day, it's still being said by the lawyers for George Papadopoulos, who came out with, I'm sure this was part of their agreement, with their ridiculous statements basically accusing Trump of the collusion with Russia, which is pretty amazing. That must have been part of the plea deal of George Papadopoulos' lawyers, because there was, that the investigation has already proven that's not true. So please, stupid lawyers, don't come out and say lies to then continue the Russian narrative just because that was part of your plea deal.
So this is just a Robert Mueller big $28 million nothing burger.
Yes, except that it is covered, it's pulled together all the evidence, covered the trails as much as they could, tried to frame everybody up, and they covered the trail of all those frame-ups and all the money that the FBI spent and the State Department. They all spent money on this, okay? They paid Stephen Halper $400,000 for just the setup for George Papadopoulos, under the auspices that he was doing social research.
And don't forget, Stephen Halper is Senior Executive Service Operative. He has direct ties. We've shown you clearly through a number of audios and articles his direct ties to the Queen.
He was taking, Richard Dearlove was giving orders to Stephen Halper, who was giving orders to Christopher Steele. They actually all met together. This was in British newspapers again and again. For instance, when Boris Johnson met the high-level Russian representative from the Trump team, that's the way they billed him in the newspapers in Britain. So in Britain, they knew all along, because they were running these stories in the British newspapers constantly. And they were making George Papadopoulos to be this really big, powerful, most powerful person on the Trump team. No, here's how bad it was. George Papadopoulos was invited to come to a meeting that he had never come to before and to give her a little report. So he wrote up the report. He came. He met Stephen Halper. Stephen Halper became his best friend forever. Met with him repeatedly in Britain. Met with him in America. Met with him over and over again. Got him positions. Got him connected.
Chumming him to be their stooge.
Absolutely framing him up. Then Joseph Mifsud met with him, and what supposedly happened then? Supposedly, according to all the Brits, Joseph Mifsud said that George Papadopoulos said he wanted dirt on Hillary and that he wanted the 33,000 emails that were supposedly deleted, which we now know Christopher Wray still has multiple copies of them in the FBI director's office.
But we also know that Hillary Clinton and the Rose Law Firm holds the digital keys to the FBI. So nobody can do anything. The Senior Executive Services is running the joint, and Hillary Clinton holds the keys.
So the whole George Papadopoulos and Hillary's emails, we now know that courtesy copies were sent to Chinese. Every single one of those 33,000 missing emails. They weren't missing. The Chinese had them the whole time, we now know, because a courtesy copy was sent to them. So George, when Mifsud was asked about this, early on he said, I didn't say anything to him about Russian dirt, and I didn't talk about Hillary missing emails. And George Papadopoulos said the same thing, but it kept coming up over and over and over again with Stephen Halper's conversations with George Papadopoulos, to the point where he basically said, look, I can get these for you. So Stephen Halper is really the criminal here. They set up George.
Well, then how come if we can show we're just retired teachers, and we can show all of this evidence that shows that Stephen Halper and how's he attached to the Privy Council, the Queen, and all of this, plus we can show the other end of the stream of how he's connected to this possible overthrow of the United States government. We can show it. We've got all the evidence. How come fake Fox News won't report diddly squat on it? They just keep you in there a little spin zone.
Well, like Obama said in his rant recently, He didn't try to close down Fox News. Yes, he did. He brought espionage charges against one particular person, and again he tried to close down Fox News. And when he can stand up and say there's only one station that he has to fight with because all of the rest of the mainstream media is on his side, Obama should close his mouth because everything he says shows his guilt.
But Fox News doesn't report the full truth.
Oh, of course not. They're not getting close to this.
So Obama's concerned that they're reporting any truth, and my concern is that they report diddly squat.
Why isn't Michael Gaeta, the person who did the setup in Italy, in Rome, for Joseph Mifsud, so that Joseph Mifsud could introduce George Papadopoulos at the university, which is nothing more than a CIA outlet. It's where they teach intelligence to the Italians, basically, about a mile from the Vatican in Rome. And it's a group called the Link Campus University, which had also a campus in Malta. And so Joseph Mifsud taught at both of them. But he was a direct CIA operative. And his handler was Michael Gaeta, Gaeta. He's an FBI representative working out of the U.S. Embassy there. And this is all very well known because it was in the British papers over and over again. It's been testimony that was given before Congress, and so we're quoting nothing that isn't just so common. All you have to do is Google it, and it'll come right up. So Michael Gaeta set up and paid for George Papadopoulos to come to Italy to meet a girl whose name was...
a woman.
A woman. No, this was a very young girl in college whose... name was Olga Polanskaya, who claimed to be a direct relative, a niece, in fact, of Vladimir Putin. And George Papadopoulos believed this, had sex with her. Then when that wasn't good enough, Stefan Halper arranged for him to come back to England repeatedly, where he set George Papadopoulos up with his secretary, who also had sex with him. Now, this is why George Papadopoulos wasn't quite forthcoming with the fact that he was such an idiot that he believed he was having sex with Putin's niece and was going to get some dirt on Hillary and arrange a meeting with Putin and Trump. They laughed him out of the Trump campaign.
Well, this is a good time to go to this tweet here that says, it's a retweet from Caleb J. Hull, and it reads, "I complained plenty about Fox News, but I never threatened to shut them down." And then that's a close quote. Then Trump continues on. But it's probably a good time to remind you that Obama used the Espionage Act to go after whistleblowers who leaked to journalists more than all previous presidents combined.
Yes. In other words, every time Obama opens his mouth, the lies just pour out, and it also reveals his previous lies, because he'll start his virtue signaling and using, the Democratic basic keywords that set off liberals. But what is he really doing? He's revealing the truth, because there was fact-checking that showed that almost every single thing he said in his first big campaign push to go against Trump have been found to be lies. And those of us who remember were there. We witnessed it. We saw it. We didn't forget. So Trump is the one who needs to be saying that James Wolfe and Ali Watkins need to go to jail for leaking, that Andrew McCabe needs to go to jail for leaking, that James Comey and Daniel Richman, who leaked to the New York Times, need to go to jail. This is espionage. They leaked top secret information that affected national security and in fact has attacked our president with what they call a soft coup, only because guns weren't used, though there were many assassination attempts which we have not heard of in the news, but we have brought forth in our reports. And so what is really going on here? Obama is out attempting to help the Democrats, and he's sinking their ship. Just like Hillary, every time she opens her mouth, the Democrats' ship goes down so bad that Bernie jumped off the Democratic ship with his socialism and basically started his own socialist party. But, of course, the socialism in the Democrat Party, is in fact gone so crazy that there is no Democrat Party anymore. There's just, you take out the C, add an M, and you have demon rats, and that's what they are.
The next tweet I bring your attention to is a retweet with Richard Grinnell. Fact check. Real Donald Trump kicked the Nazi out of New York City after 14 years, and multiple presidents allowed him to stay. before you comment on that, I do want to point out to folks, so we've had Nazis in our government. I mean, Prescott Bush was an attorney for the Nazis, and then his whole line of corrupt Bush sons and grandsons were right there in Washington. And then you've got Herr SES Mueller. So what we're really seeing, and perhaps with the senior executive service, is the whole Nazi organization just went underground, infiltrated our government. That's my theory.
The Nazi they're talking about had been protected, living in New York. Everybody knew it. And finally, Trump did the right thing. But if you want to talk about Nazis, let's name a real Nazi.
Well, I'm saying they're protected. Their own. Duh. They're not going to throw out one of their fellow Nazis.
Are you kidding? The biggest Nazi in the world is the largest donor to the Democrat Party, George Soros. He was a Nazi. And he actually put his own relatives into concentration camps, stole their goods, and then stole it from the man he was working with, his uncle, and then used that on the black market. So this man was literally sending people to their death and profiting off of it at age 14 as a Nazi. Let's talk about Ratzinger, Pope Benedict. He was a Nazi. Let's talk about Ukraine and the fact that the Ukraine is basically still the Party of Regions which supported the Nazis, and they have given the highest award in their country to who? John McCain and Joe Biden.
Look, they're not going to come out wearing swastikas on their sleeves. I mean, only Prince Harry does that. So, folks, don't think for 1 minute you're not dealing with evil here.
Antifa uses the same flag and slogan of the Party of Regions, which is the Nazi party, the fascist party of Ukraine. And they have enriched John McCain and Joe Biden's sons. They've enriched, Joe Biden and John Kerry's sons. They've enriched John McCain. There's donations because Ukraine is our friend, according to the way that works. We gave them $4.9 billion to put those Nazis in power in Ukraine. So no, Trump is against the Nazis, and he's against fascism, which has now become the far left liberal wing of the Democrat Party, which supports Antifa through Nazi donations of George Soros. We know George Soros donated to the opposition research against Trump. Yeah, there's Nazis, but it's not the Nazis they say.
Okay, the next one is a retweet from Eric Bowling. Watching Barack Obama take credit for real Donald Trump's success is disgraceful. Now, score so far, and then he has a list. The score is Trump. Unemployment rate, GDP, wage growth, number of blacks employed, Hispanics employed, women employed, ISIS wins, homegrown terror events. Obama, slick speaking, and school shootings. Oh, that's right, but they really weren't as many as they thought there were, but the FBI was in charge of them. Oh, is the FBI running false flags around America?
Well, yeah. Of course they are. And of course, as we know, Dianne Feinstein said there have been hundreds of automatic weapons used in school shootings when in fact there were 280 reported and only 11 that could be confirmed. In other words, it's a lot of propaganda in many, many cases. But
yet they'll take your site down if you question Sandy Hook.
Oh my goodness!
And
yes.
That is such an apparent false flag from the very beginning. We saw it. I mean, just as school teachers, we looked at the lay of the building and knew, well, there's a false flag.
All of Obama's false flags were found to be pathetic, disturbingly inept and incompetent false flags that didn't even do what he wanted done, which was to get the United Nations Small Arms Treaty, which he signed illegally, approved by Congress, which they will never approve. So let's remember, what is Obama's legacy? Nothing. Obamacare is the worst thing that ever happened to medical insurance in America. So then what is his legacy? His legacy is that he bombed 8 different countries continuously every single day that he was in office for 8 years. He dropped more bombs than any other president. He was at war more days of the year, of the time that he was in of his term, than any other president. Everything that he touched, we are now finding out, was corrupt, illegal, lies, scams, and basically pushing money that he was stealing from some agencies down and taking it out of the government and giving it to non-governmental organizations, the same ones that George Soros gives money to.
And
Nothing.
Of course, don't forget that he is our first Indonesian president who was married to Big Mike. What they paint and give the American people, this corrupt media, is not what happened in that White House.
Oh, not at all. Plus, remember, he sold out to Silicon Valley. He gave all digital control away of our country to corporations that are multinational corporations. He took $2 billion in gifts for his library from those people that he basically extorted.
He had outrageous hot dog parties in the White House.
Delivered by a strange place. But how anyone could have fundraisers at that place, I can't comprehend.
Nasty.
That should basically right there show you who they are. But really, what is his legacy? Total lawlessness. The SES becoming completely weaponized. That would be one of his great legacies. And besides that, you can't name a good thing he ever did. He didn't help blacks. He didn't help minorities.
Not black, so
he
why
didn't
would
help anybody. He didn't help anyone.
Himself.
Not even illegal aliens. They now know when they look into these things that the virtue signaling, the fake lies that he is pouring out of his mouth, when you look into them, which we weren't allowed to when he was president because they said that he was an African American and that would be considered racist. We weren't allowed to look into them. He's a fool now to speak out because we're allowed to look into them, and everything he says is going to be proven to be a lie. That's why up till now, most of his talks have been big dollar talks where he charged huge amounts of money and they were secret, and the people had to be screened before they were allowed into the meetings because he doesn't want anyone to stand up and say, but Mr. President, you said and did the opposite, and then quote, as they have now with the fact checkers, that everything he said about Donald Trump was a lie. Remember when he said, how is Donald Trump going to improve our economy? What's he going to do? Has he got a magic wand? Well, I guess he does, Mr. President, ex-President Obama, or whatever we want to call you, Barry Soetoro. You are a disgrace. And right now, the statistics show through polls that people consider you to be the worst president of all time. It's going to get much worse as you are convicted for the crimes against the U.S. Constitution when you meddled in the election and you basically led a color revolution against a true election. And then once he was elected, you ran a soft coup against a sitting president while you were a sitting president.
I'm sorry, I don't want to call it a soft coup because this is an information war. So you're not going to see guns coming out. But what he has done is as damaging as any gun in a war.
It's a coup d'etat. I should stop saying soft coup. It's a coup d'etat, which, yes, if they could, they would get out guns. Yes, they certainly would.
They sure want them out of your hands.
They wanted you to go out and riot on the streets and kill people, and they're still support. Matter of fact, what did Obama just say? How dare there be a president that doesn't condemn the Nazis who go out in public with masks over their faces? Okay, Antifa all have masks over their faces, and you met with them. You supported them. You supported Black Lives Matters, Mr. Obama. Do you think we don't remember reality? That was when we gave you a little slack because you were supposedly the first black president, which you weren't. And even if, don't get me started.
And the media wasn't telling people. And this media continuing to tell lies to the American people keeps them brainwashed. This is a national security issue now. And I'll tell you, I remember going to a meeting with some of my girlfriends who I thought were very smart. And they were very upset about Sandy Hook. And I said, no children died at Sandy Hook. Don't worry about that. That was a government false flag. They went absolutely bonkers. To this day, haven't spoken to me because of that. So this lie has affected me personally. And that's why I took up this badge to move forward with it. Because if the media can lie and smart women like that buy it, then a lot of people buy this media crap.
Let's just... I was a superintendent. Someone showed me one picture of Sandy Hook, and I said, that didn't happen. And they said, well, what are you talking about? You can't say that. I said, look at the black mold at the base of the doors. No school can open with black mold in it.
That'd be a health violation.
This building has had a flood, and it's probably been closed down for years because there's things covering the windows. You can't cover windows. That's a fire hazard.
And there were many other things, but Thomas, do we really want to go down that road right now?
I just want to say that the blood on the front porch of the school at Sandy Hook never coagulated, and no one was shot on the front porch.
There's so much.
There was no one shot. No one ever bled on that front porch.
No, but the government lied to us, and the FBI was right there continuing to push this lie down Americans.
Obama invited all of those people. Some of them had already met with him previously as major anti-gun people that had been working with him in the White House on their anti-gun program, which they were trying to get the UN Small Arms Treaty passed, and they needed to take guns away from Americans before Hillary came to power. That was the agenda. Obama is the worst president we have ever had.
Well, there is a tweet now about Dave Hughes running for Congress, and Trump says that he has his total endorsement, just again pointing out that that's what we need. We need these MAGA candidates to win in the midterms so that this talk about impeachment will just be put to rest.
Go MAGA. I got to go back. Joseph Mifsud was sued by Hillary and the DNC recently, along with everyone that is innocent and had nothing to do with the Russian dossier. That's who they're suing. They're suing Trump. They're suing everybody. And they're suing Joseph Mifsud. They've named everybody except the guilty culprits. So when they named Joseph Mifsud, I said, goodbye, Joseph. He won't be coming back. This is what happened with Joseph. As soon as Joseph came out and said in public, he didn't talk to George Papadopoulos about Hillary emails. He then disappeared. So then they traced it down because he was in the news and everybody wanted to talk to him, and they tried to trace him down and they couldn't find him in Malta, couldn't find him in Italy. So they went to the university where he worked, and the head of the university in Italy, this Link Campus University, says, oh, no, I'm his boss. I told Joseph that he needs to just go hide while all this heat is on him. So I set up a place for him to go in a remote place of Italy that no one will find him. When they went back and talked to Mr. Scoti again, the head of this university, he said, oh, no, Joseph is still hiding. And I talked to him just the other day, and he said he's really, really upset with me that he doesn't even have the internet, but he has to stay hidden. And so I told him he has to stay hidden. Why is he hiding? And how come he's dead, folks? Because he's not a real Russian spy, or he'd go to Russia. And that's why he was told to go hide out in Italy.
Is John McCain dead?
Probably not. They might be together on an island that Oleg Deripaska has for all of his associates.
Did we ever see a picture of him in a hospital bed? And were there any funeral pictures of the open casket? That's why you have an open casket, people, so you have eyes to see that somebody is dead. Was there any proof that he's dead?
Yes, there was proof because the stitches they put in his head, which if there was a tumor there, it was on his temple lobe, and he'd have difficulty speaking and even understanding words. And what did they do? He took the Band-Aid off while it still had the worst job of stitching of a wound I've ever seen in my life. I guess that was to get our sympathy, I guess.
To orthopedic boot he had from one leg to the other.
Oh, every day it was on a different foot. Plus, the point is, they don't stitch things up that way anymore. Anybody who's had an operation knows that on your face, they're going to do the worst stitching job in human history. I mean, I could have stitched it up much better. They had knots on the end of each stitch. They don't do that. That was a fake. That was a fake out, folks. Now, where he is, what he's doing, we pointed out he is the culprit behind the Russian dossier. He is as guilty as anyone, if not more guilty. So where he is, don't know, but he certainly might be with Joseph Mifsud. But here's what we say. If they got Joseph Mifsud and he testified, he's going to testify in favor of George Papadopoulos, which means that it was a frame-up. And then he would testify against Stephen Halper. He'd testify against Cambridge intelligence seminars. He's testify against Richard Dearlove and against Anthony Wood and against Alexander Downer. All of them, it was a conspiracy. Michael Gator, they'd all go down. Joseph Mifsud is probably dead. But if he's not then he is so well paid off that he'll do everything he can to make sure that he disappears. Now remember, when you want to disappear, you go talk to Oleg Deripaska, the richest Russian oligarch in that there is, and who is he? He has these secret islands. He's got secret boats. The last time John McCain went to meet Oleg Deripaska, he went on 3 different yachts and then was taken in the night by a dinghy from one yacht to the next until he finally came to Oleg Deripaska's yacht. But we still got a picture of you, John, getting on the yacht. So that's what Oleg Deripaska is, the major Russian manipulator in America, working, of course, in tandem with George Soros, the number one Nazi fascist.
Moving along, two tweets that look at the economy. The first is a quote from Lou Dobbs. To this point, President Trump's achievements are unprecedented. And then Trump tweets, we are breaking all jobs and economic records, but importantly, our country has tremendous future potential. We have just begun.
To hear Obama attempt with his small mind, because he has great speechwriters, okay? They probably wrote for Hitler or Mussolini or any fascist you can think of, because they're fascist speeches. And basically, they're telling you from an authoritative power position what it's going to be. And he thinks he can still get away with that by just saying things and people believe. You were a miserable president for economics. It could have been worse, but you were waiting for the crash until Hillary came, and that was already planned ahead of time. But we can just name the crimes that you did with economics. Look at the tariffs. Look at the TPP. Look at NAFTA. You continued to support NAFTA, which lost us between $3 to $5 trillion.
He didn't care. He was working for the globalists, and the agenda was to take down America.
He did
so
nothing.
For the globalists, he did a good job, except they did everything they could to get Hillary elected, and they failed.
We, the people, got nothing in our pockets from the Obama administration. We got nothing to encourage civil rights. We got nothing to encourage the Constitution. We had complete lawlessness. The executive office of the federal government was run by I don't know any other word to say, but someone who appeared to be a complete lunatic or had a plan to completely create the demise of America.
And the final tweet today is Apple prices may increase because of the massive tariffs we may be imposing on China, but there is an easy solution where there would be zero tax and indeed a tax incentive. Make your products in the United States instead of China. Start building new plants now. Exciting. MAGA.
Now, in between the lines, he's saying, Taiwan, we took your largest company and got you out before China militarily took you over. Bring your other ones on over. And Harley-Davidson, tough luck for you. And oh, by the way, you people who said you were going to move your auto production out of Canada and Mexico back into America and didn't, tough luck. And China, what don't you get about zero tariffs? What don't you get about the fact that if you put tariffs on products, we're just going to beat you down to zero. We're just not going to do business with you. And any minute, Trump is going to slap a UN sanction on you because of you breaking the sanctions with Iran and North Korea openly. So if you are really looking for either one of two things, full nuclear annihilation or perhaps ousting President Xi Jinping, who is in fact at this point a totalitarian dictator who is going into megalomania because One Belt, One Road doesn't work. Threatening every country you do business with doesn't work. Demanding that they take the word Taiwan out of their vocabulary is not going to make you any friends. You won't make another deal, China. You will not make another deal, and I can guarantee you that. Why? Because you've now shown that you want to leverage, cheat, and literally militaristically manipulate anyone you do business with, and if they don't kowtow to you, you then threaten them. That isn't the way to do business.
You know, in our last audio, Thomas, you had mentioned that Jack Ma might find himself in a bit of trouble, and so I've been watching for that, and sure enough, in the news, he is retiring. What do you make of that?
Well, as I always say, every rich Chinese oligarch is going to be killed, and their money will simply be absorbed into the collective.
Will that include Eric Schmidt if he's still over there?
Oh, yes. Eric Schmidt is such a fool. Too bad he's not listening to our broadcast. It could save his life. What he's getting into is they're going to suck him dry because they set him up, and Trump set him up with the fake $850 billion worth of deals. So Eric rushed over there to get in on those deals because they thought China had money. It's now coming out that China doesn't have any money. They're basically bankrupt. That's why they're leveraging all the countries that they have bought resources from. They are a manufacturing company. They are only 45% self-sufficient. If we don't buy their products, they die. So what happened to Venezuela, what's happening in Iran, what's happening in Turkey is going to happen in China any minute. But they don't care. They're not going to let anybody know that they're starving their people to death. They're not going to let anybody know of their social network system that can throw someone in jail for having the wrong look on their face, which Eric Schmidt is working diligently for. And also, I'm sure he's given him the Boston Dynamics / Alphabet patents for the robot warriors, which, as I told everyone, Eric Schmidt is looking for a country, just like in Star Wars, where... what was his name? Where one of the Jedi generals...
Well, you should know.
I should know. I should know. I forget his name. Anyway, one of the evil guys went off and created his own robot army. That is Eric Schmidt, y'all. And he's over there doing that right now. And that's the reason he hasn't come out of China. That's the reason that they didn't subpoena him to testify for Google or YouTube or Alphabet. Hello? Who is more guilty? I mean, he was the big money behind all Facebook, behind Instagram, behind all of them. He was there from the beginning because he was one of the actual real people who can write code. The rest of them, they're a bunch of idiots, including John McAfee and his fake McAfee company, which was an extension of the CIA. And so when we're looking at these things, what I'm about to tell you is very simple. The last big Chinese investors on their stock market that made a ton of money simply were gathered up and killed. That's the way it works in China. So if you look in America, the richest Chinese in America...
Would that include China Chow? The Secretary of Transportation
her money's
all over the China shipping industry.
Well,
and I just think that is totally corrupt. Oh, wait a minute. She's married to Mitch McConnell, so we can't look there.
But her relatives sit on the boards for the biggest boards for shipping in China, which, of course, is a totalitarian regime, so it means it's a monopoly.
And then also you have to look at Bruce Orr. I asked the question, is he Chinese? And somebody says, no, he's North Korean. Well, what's the difference there?
North Korea oftentimes recently has been accused of being the hackers of Sony. So here's the deal. Bruce Orr is as corrupt and criminal as anybody, and I don't know how he's not going to go down because he's already been a songbird. So the things he's already said, if they actually ever pan out, which some of these things will simply pan out over time, and it'll pan out when the Mueller investigation's gone and other investigations are opened, and then we will find out. We won't find out the truth. We know the truth. We'll see that truth come into indictments. So, Ma, you better get ready. You're going to be just like Joseph Mifsud. You're just going to disappear, dude. So, I predict you're going to move to America and live in that same building that has the highest security of any apartment complex in the world where a number of Chinese billionaires live. And guess what? They don't even step outside that building because they know they will be murdered and their assets would be frozen, except through dirty dealing with Obama, they were able to move their assets to this country, which did not make China very happy. It's just like when all the Russian oligarchs moved their money to London, particularly the city of London, and they all started buying in the same complexes, which, again, highly secure, but the second they step out of Britain... The Russians get them, put them in jail, torture them, get their offshore accounts. Putin collects it, divides it between his oligarchs, and they wait for the next oligarch to make a mistake. And sorry, Mr. Ma, that's going to happen to you.